Welcome to the Mixology Talk podcast.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Julia, and we're the folks behind abarabove.com, the ultimate resource for craft bartenders, bar operators, and just about anybody else looking to make great craft drinks.
I'm a bar consultant with more than 10 years of industry experience.
And I run abarabove.com, bringing weekly articles and cocktail recipes to help you make great drinks and grow your career behind the bar.
This is episode number 125 of the Mixology Talk podcast, and we're going to continue the trend that we've been focusing on recently with career development, and we're going to be talking about the brand ambassador position. Joining me is Trevor Schneider. He's a brand ambassador for Reyka Vodka. Very excited to talk to him, and he's going to discuss how he got started, what it means to be a brand ambassador, kind of a sneak peek in a day-to-day life, and some things that you could work on now as a bartender to really position yourself for that brand ambassador position when you're ready to take that jump. So stay tuned. So welcome back to Mixology Talk podcast. I got a great guest for us today, Trevor Schneider from one of my favorite vodkas, Reyka Vodka, and I do mean that. It's been one of the vodkas I latched onto early in my career for many reasons. One of the biggest, though, was correct me if I'm wrong, Trevor, but it was the first green vodka out on the market, right?
Yeah, we were one of the first geothermal distilleries in the world. Not the first one, but one of the first ones.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. And it's a great Icelandic vodka. And I was mentioning this to, there it is. I was mentioning this to Trevor before we started the podcast, is for the price point, it's going to be hard to beat this stuff.
Yeah.
So he's a brand ambassador for Reyka. And today's episode, we're going to be talking about kind of diving deep into what is a brand ambassador and kind of how to get there. And I know this is something a lot of bartenders kind of strive for. They see this as a very good career path to them. So it's great to talk to somebody that's actually done it and can offer some advice and perspective on that. So thanks for joining us, man.
You're very welcome, Chris. Thank you very much.
If you don't mind just kind of taking us through kind of your journey,
Sure.
And talking about how you kind of evolved into this role. Just kind of tell us, kind of an overview of it.
So I'm glad we have some time because it's a bit of a story, but I'll try to keep it short. Essentially for me, right, like a lot of people, I worked in the hospitality industry in many different facets, from just kind of getting in and learning about hospitality on the, cleaning the bathroom level. I'll use that one loosely. And then moving on to, the bar back or kind of bartending and then managing a program and then cocktail creation and then kind of overseeing or being a training specialist. There's so many opportunities. One of the things that I really lived by is you're only as good as your last service. So it's a wonderful thing to be able to go out and be challenged constantly in hospitality. And for me, I had moved to New York to pursue a career in entertainment. And what you do is you find a job at night so that you can go on auditions and do that stuff during the day. So I eventually got a job and I really enjoyed being behind the bar. Waiting tables was not something that I really enjoyed, but I did it. I thought I was a terrible waiter, but I got some positive, mostly positive feedback, but personally, I just felt myself not being in an environment that I could contribute to the way that I could. So I ended up finding myself behind the bar, and being behind the bar for me was my stage. So it was my ability to kind of let my personality come through and then let some of my creativity and then obviously my, entertainment skills as well. So it's a lot more involved than that, but that is the short version of how I got into it.
Right.
That's that.
And then how did you make that transition from decide, okay, I'm good at my job. I'm a great bartender. I can craft cocktails and do all that stuff.
Sure.
And now I have this idea that I want to possibly be a brand ambassador because that's only been around for about 10 years in kind of the form that we know it now, or 12?
Right. Yeah. That's a bigger question, right? In regards to the timing, because there has been an evolution of the role.
Right.
But I would say maybe 10, maybe 15 years max. But then it was kind of like a hybrid role, and we still have that hybrid role depending on what supplier you work for. But to kind of answer your first question, right? I mean, essentially, I had bartended for a long enough time that my body was starting to tell me that it was time to do something else. Yeah. So like my joints, right? My wrists, my elbows, my knees, my back, stuff like that. Most of the bars that I worked in were high volume bars.
Sure.
And I chose that for kind of twofold. One was it made the nights go by a lot faster. But two, obviously you had an opportunity to make more money in New York, selling more and making more drinks. So with that being said, you know, a couple solid years of doing high volume and especially cocktails, my body, the wear and tear was really wearing on me. But I also wanted to leverage my experience like going forward. Sure. I didn't want to just jump into another, you know, kind of field or a completely different position where I would have to start all over again. Because, you know, in most places with bartenders, seniority is kind of a big thing. Right. And I can say on a very small level, going from, you know, kind of working slower shifts to then working like the prime time shifts where, you know, in most bigger cities, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, you know, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, those are the prime shifts and night shifts, obviously. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, I searched for a brand ambassador job for approximately probably about 5 years.
Okay.
And it was kind of just like taking the temperature, right? I had a lot of friends that had either crossed over from behind the bar and got into ambassador position or just flat out were like studied marketing and got into it. I make this joke all the time. I say that in a lot of ways and not all ambassadors, but me, I'm a marketing tool. Okay. I'm utilized to then, you know, kind of achieve or pass a message on to a couple different audiences, right? And obviously I'm much more suited in the way to direct a conversation towards a bartender because I was a bartender for a very long time.
Sure.
So I speak the language of bartender, whatever that means. Marketing people say that all the time. And I'm like, well, man, I can relate because I worked in that field. Right. Please don't say we speak bartender because that's like, I don't think that's the right approach. But anyway, I digress. So, you know, being able to be personable and understanding, I learned so much from being behind the stick for so long. It wasn't just about memorizing cocktail recipes. It wasn't just about, you know, like a specific technique. It was the ability to interact and engage with people and actually read people, right, and provide them with what they wanted, which is what I would say probably my most valuable asset, taking from bartender moving into this role.
Sure.
And I mean, one of the easiest ones, I like to try to keep things pretty simple, Chris. It's like the first thing or the best advice I could ever give is just listen. Yeah. Like all you got to do, close your mouth and listen. People then and people now, more so now than then, but they tell you exactly what they want, you know, and you're in that hospitality role to provide them. You don't want to say no, or you want to say no the least amount. You want to say like, let me see what I can do, or let me speak to the chef. Maybe we can get that, you know. Right. I'm not 100% sure. You want to like play that liaison. I mean, Jesus, I've gone off on a tangent here, but I always wanted to be aware of my guest and make sure that I'm providing like as much of the ability that I can provide them with what they're asking for.
Sure.
So I turn that around on me, right, with like my body and working long hours like all bartenders do, and the wear and tear. And I'll say wear and tear not only on the body from like a physical standpoint, but the drinking as well, right? I mean, that this is a big thing that I think a lot of us are, myself included, for a very long time, not being as cognizant, right, of how we're treating our own bodies. and the onus is to take care of the customer. But, you know, as hospitality professionals, you're in it a long time. So you need to look after yourself as well. And it's not, as I said, it's not just the drinking, it's the it's the sleep, it's the exercise, it's all of those things.
I mean, we have
huge.
some of the best food in the country, right? If you work in a restaurant, you're going to get some pretty decent food from day to day, but it's usually high fat, high salt, and not the best food for you, and you eat it a lot. So I couldn't agree with you more.
And you're usually shoveling it down, Chris. You know, you're not actually enjoying the food. You're pre-shifting it, or you're stepping away because the rush is just about to come.
Right.
So again, you know, that's, and not to, you know, turn this into a diet conversation, but that's a diet in itself, right? As you're just kind of shoveling food in. But so I made the move, and I kind of kept looking for things that fit. Coincidentally, they were all vodka brands. I won't mention them because it's been a long time, but I wanted to work for a company and for a brand that I believed in. Yeah. And that it was not going to require a tremendous amount of work for me to talk about, for me to make drinks, for me to actually enjoy when, you know, all the lights and cameras were kind of not rolling.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So it became that situation where I said no to the first couple offers, and they were for kind of personal reasons, right? There was nothing wrong with the brands. I liked the brands. I just didn't like me with the brands.
Sure. And that's an important match.
It's a huge match. You know, it becomes that situation, and I try to, you know, obviously our audience here is young professionals, and making the correlation with, you know, that Tuesday lunch when, you know, it's the first of the month and you've been slated to take inventory. It's probably not your favorite shift, but somebody's got to do it every 30 plus odd days.
Right.
And that becomes that same situation when you represent a brand as an ambassador. You know, I'll draw two quick parallels, right? Everybody they see what we do as ambassadors, and it's a party, and it's entertainment, and it's all of these things. But what they don't see is like the 8:30 and the 9 a.m. conference calls.
Right.
Or they don't see the expense reports when, you know, my boss or the boss's boss is breathing down your neck like, hey, like, you got to get this in. And it's like 3, 4, sometimes 5 hours if you let the expenses slip. Right. You know, there are all aspects of every job that people don't enjoy.
Yeah.
But it goes hand in hand.
Right. Yeah, I actually worked for a large spirits provider for a bit, as well as a kind of a consulting role. And that's one of the things that really surprised me, is the mountain of paperwork that is involved with working for a company like that. You know, like you said, it sounds glamorous. You know, you're in front of clients all the time.
100%.
It's probably 50-50 on the amount of work, FaceTime versus paperwork.
Yeah, I would say it depends, right? So for me, that's about accurate, but I do know that people that work for other suppliers, it's a little bit different, right?
Sure.
And then obviously it's different based on the brand that you work on as well.
Right.
So, you know, for me on Reyka, I'm kind of the only guy that represents the brand here in the US, but say on somebody like Hendrix, they have a team of people, right? There's 4 ambassadors, and then there's this, that, and the other. So it's a little different.
Sure, absolutely. Now, was that one? What was your biggest surprise when you kind of jumped into the brand ambassador role?
So I think, kind of piggybacking on my last kind of point, right, which would be, I didn't really know how much work and like I'll put this in air quotes, the corporate aspect.
Sure.
There are. I mean, we work in a crazy industry. The spirits industry is huge. It's you know, I embrace the bartender aspect of it, and now I'm slowly embracing the ambassador aspect of it. But there are a lot of people that don't see what ambassadors do day to day that factor in to, like, kind of, I'll say straightforward, like your bonus. Or like, you know, like the evolution of a promotion. William Grant & Sons is a global company. Their headquarters is in Scotland. So I only work here in the United States. So to kind of communicate or convey the effort, you know, all of what I put in, you need to be able to communicate that stuff. And I don't get an opportunity to sometimes get in front of those people, let alone meet them. Right.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
So the biggest surprise would be that aspect of kind of, and I say this horribly, tooting my own horn, because, you know, if people, I'm not into that. Right. I let my actions speak, you know, without my words. But that's been the most challenging aspect for me, is just kind of communicating what it is that I'm doing and how I'm achieving that.
Yeah, that's got to be a kind of a difficult part of that role, is kind of, you know, showcasing or highlight your successes.
Sure.
In a good way that doesn't seem, you know,
too like braggy or boisterous, you know, like it's got to find that happy medium, like you said.
Yeah. So you brought up one thing. I just kind of want to take a little sidetrack here.
Sure.
You mentioned kind of the day-to-day of a brand ambassador. Do you mind kind of like talking about what that looks like a week-long progression of a bar? It doesn't have to be that long, but
no, sure. I think that's a great question. I get this one asked quite a bit, and so I'll lead with this: is that like no one day is always the same.
Sure.
There are similarities. I'll start like today, right? I woke up, jumped right into my inbox in my home office, because today is an admin day. I'll be traveling.
Brand ambassadors on Fridays, right?
No, not really, right? Like there are 911 reasons usually on Fridays.
Right.
Essentially, right, this is a Monday through Friday job, but there are floating positions all the time.
Sure.
Last weekend, I left on Saturday and went to work. So I literally had this joke in my head, was like, can I take a personal day on a Sunday? And then I said it to like a civilian, right? And they were like, what are you talking about? I'm like, forget it. Don't even worry about it. It doesn't matter. So today I got up, right? I checked the inbox, make sure that, you know, finger on the pulse, make sure everybody's okay, whether it be somebody looking for a recipe, whether somebody like trying to get me to come to a market, whether it be a plan for something. So dealing with things like that. And then it could be some internal things as well. Next week is our national company meeting. So the inbox has been pretty hot, you know, like, hey, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? Do you think we can do this? You know, is this a good idea? But then it moves into like today I had a couple calls, just kind of like taking a temperature on everything, right? With PR and our creative agency, and then our kind of our execution agency, which kind of executes bigger events and stuff. And then everybody kind of just weighs in and whatever. We're planning an Icelandic trip with some writers and with some photographers. So kind of taking that a temperature. And then, you know, it moves into like things that I'm working on, right? Like some cocktail development, or like some new creative things or programs that I'm trying to work on. So that's today, right? If I rewind like 2 weeks ago, all of that stuff will kind of be happening, but now put me like in a car with a salesperson, like in another place, like hitting up bars, like meeting up with people like yourself to kind of chat about whatever, or just flat out say hi, right? And like be like, I'm in town, what's going on, what's new, what are you making, what are you up to, like what have you been to, like what did you learn, like picking the brain, and then just kind of talking shop, right? So it's never the same day. I have to say that I've definitely gotten more used to the admin days where it's, you know, a phone call, a phone conference, emails, working on a project, doing expenses, monthly reporting, stuff like that. Because that at first makes me feel like I'm not doing my job, right? And in a lot of ways, some people would argue that that's not why I'm specifically hired. I'm hired to be out there in the field, speaking to people, hanging out, entertaining people, throwing events, doing all of those things. So I agree that there needs to be a balance with everything, right? But like the work day kind of varies. And like I said, to kind of put a nail in the coffin, there's not one day that really is the same.
Yeah. No,
so being flexible in that regard, the structure of that is completely ripped apart and shattered and then put back together.
Yeah, I've talked to a couple of brand ambassadors and worked with some in the past, and it's always kind of amazing kind of taking a sneak peek at their day, because it's
Yep.
still all over the place. I mean, it's pretty incredible. You have a couple of common days to kind of tie things down. Like Fridays seem to be a pretty good day to
Yep.
bed admin and just kind of chill and relax. But you're getting pulled left, right. In a moment's notice, you got to do some fancy footwork. So it's pretty incredible.
I would say it's
a brand ambassador.
Yes, the energy level for sure, right?
Yeah.
It's like that. It's that late shift when you're like tired and you got 2 hours left and you really just need to finish, even when your body really isn't up for it and your attitude definitely isn't up for it. Energy is a huge one. And then being like nimble, right? And being able to prioritize like on the fly. And understanding, like, if this email comes in, like, okay, that's not like a 911. I say this, right? It makes no sense, but this is like a 611. Sure. And then there's like a 311, and there's those different levels of like, okay, I got to drop this to now take care of this to then go back. And that happens all the time. So somebody that has ADD is a good one. I know that ADD usually never gets the head, the positive nod, but definitely ADD helps. I mean, a generation of younger individuals that can multitask in a huge way. So all those ladies out there, ladies are way better at multitasking than men are. I know I won't be I may be the first one to say it, but I won't be the last one to say it. Ladies just figure it out, man. I'm over here throwing a tantrum, and the ladies already got it figured out. And
I'm done. I fixed that like 3 minutes ago, man.
You're like, how did you do that? Jesus, I got to get better.
That's pretty great. So one of the things you actually mentioned earlier is that you searched a long time to it was a 5-year search.
Yep.
To find the right brand that you want to represent.
Sure.
Partner with, basically.
Yeah.
What were some of the places? Where were some of the places that you looked? Like, I know like BevForce is one.
Yep. So there's a bunch, right? You use the example of BevForce. I was on that a long time ago and just kind of rooting around, right? Mm-hmm. This is really not the beneficial answer, for your audience, but being in New York and working like freelance and doing a bunch of things, it was all about networking for me. Right. It was all about asking around and asking people. Essentially the way that I landed this position was through an old friend of mine. His name is Tim Cooper. He now works for 86 Company, but we were bartenders in New York. And I had befriended him, and he was in a big way, like unconventionally or unofficially, he was my mentor. And I was just asking, like, hey man, I'm trying to like make that crossover. If you hear of anything, because a lot of people in our industry, there is, I won't say clicky's not the word, but there's a close knit network of people that you earn respect for and you sacrifice. One of the things that I think is a big downfall, another bit of advice towards a young, bartender that's trying to make the crossover is like, I try to keep these things simple, man. Work everywhere, do every job, do everything, meet people, get out there and like, get your hands dirty. It doesn't just happen overnight. Like, these brand ambassador positions are difficult to come by because people don't give up the job. Right. Because, it took me, like you said, 5 years to find the right one. And then it just so happened that I was fortunate enough to like have the opportunity and I was ready to work. I was the yes man. It was like, do you want to go here? Yes, we'll go meet this person, meet that. And, it takes a specific person to just kind of to do the crap work. Sure. Right? Not a lot of people want to do the crap work. And I was always taking those jobs. And yes, it's not ideal or the pay wasn't where it was. But then, this one job, I meet 5 new people. And then you take another one of those jobs and you meet 5 new people. And then one person recommends you to do blah, blah, blah. I worked back of the house for William Grant & Sons for so many years at Tales of a Cocktail and events in New York that your name starts to get out there and you're the person that's like, oh, well, let's throw his name in the pool, or let's throw her name in the pool, and let's see what happens.
Sure.
So I think BevForce is a great start. Yeah. I would never rule that out. Get out there, meet those people. At the end of the day, submit your resume, get it out there. You know, another big thing nowadays, not when I was there, it's more so a huge impact, social media.
Yeah.
You know, read, follow these people, find out what they're doing. See, you know, ask them how they made any of their breaks. When I was an actor trying to be a working actor, I was always like, I was never the person saying, hey, like, Rob Schneider, can I get a selfie with you in the men's urinal in the bathroom? I was like, Rob, I'm a huge fan. I admire what you're doing. Like, is there any advice that you give me? And he literally said, work. Like, make your own movies, like write your own stuff with your friends. And sure enough, you look back at Sandler and all those guys from SNL, that's what they did. Sandler built his own empire. He didn't go to like a studio. He did his own, whatever it is, not that this is a plug for Adam Sandler, but you know what I mean? You get out there and you work with everyone, and you take all different types of jobs. I remember when I peeled 2 cases of oranges. You want to talk about a non-glorious job, because one brand ambassador, and I won't mention his name, batched a cocktail at Tales of a Cocktail, and he wanted an oleo saccharum. And I literally peeled 2 cases of oranges. You want to talk about thinking about whether or not this is the job for me? Oh, forget it. I couldn't tie my shoes afterwards, and I had citrus that was like citrus oil permanently on my hands for the whole weekend at Tails. You know, but that's not the story that people share, right? They talk about, you know, the ambassador jet setting here and in first class upgrades and upgrades in the hotel and all those things. Yes, all those things do happen, but I come from a school of people that was like juicing and cutting garnishes and doing all those things and meeting people. So be as personable and take as much work as possible.
You know, what's funny is you're kind of confirming it's been kind of this running theme for us on this podcast and just on the platform in general, is your network is absolutely gold. I mean, the more people you can meet, the more credibility you have in this industry, the further you're going to go. And I continuously tell people, like, just meet everybody from the supplier side to the people you're working with. Like, meet every single person and stay in contact with them, because it's so important. So hearing you kind of confirm that makes me smile a huge amount, because I couldn't agree with you more.
It's a big thing, but I will put an asterisk on it. I will say you need to like be professional the entire time.
Agreed. Yeah.
So absolutely. It's not just about meeting every single person. It's about like saying on some level, every meeting is like an interview.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and you don't want to be that bartender that gets kind of that little reputation for, he's good, he shows up, but man, by the end of the night, he's just a hot mess. You don't want to be that person. So you got to be a pro. You have to be. You got to go in there and say, okay, this is going to get me further in my career. I need to be a professional. Booze is great, but there's something bigger out there. And
it's way bigger than that, you know? Yeah. It's way big. I said, one of the other questions is like, well, you know, I make great cocktails. That's great, man. Or girl, that's fantastic. But that's not the only part of the job.
Right.
Yeah, you know, absolutely. A lot of people can make great cocktails.
Yeah.
I mean, if you follow some of these great classic recipes, everyone can make great cocktails.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And I kind of put an asterisk to a comment you made earlier. Your people skills that you develop behind the bar it seems like it's absolutely critical when you become a brand ambassador, because you have the language, you have that ability to kind of size somebody up instantly, and know kind of what they're at, where they're at, and how to help them and what they're looking for. So I kind of put a little asterisk by that. That's
crucial.
Yeah,
Chris, absolutely. It is absolutely crucial. And like I said, listen, and remember. And whether it's you like cruising the news feed on a social media thing and you remember a detail and you start a conversation, just being present and listening are like huge things that are simple.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fantastic. So a couple other, one last question here, and I'm sure we'll have a couple more. But in your opinion, what makes a great brand ambassador? Like, people that just stand out in their roles and they're known for that role. Like, what have they done? What can bartenders start to work on kind of aspire to that great brand ambassador position?
So what I will say, right, the short answer here is Charlotte Voisey is the perfect example of an ambassador, right?
Mm-hmm.
She's always buttoned up. She is always professional. She has her distinct personality or style that always comes through.
Right.
And like no one else can be Charlotte Voisey. So my point there is nobody else can be better at being you other than you.
Sure.
So don't try to be Charlotte Voisey. Try to be your interpretation of what that ambassador is. There's tons of great ambassadors out there.
Mm-hmm.
Our job, you know, as we've already discussed, covers a lot of different things. You play to your strengths and you always improve on your weaknesses. So getting outside of your comfort zone is like another big thing for me. Is like, you know, in the beginning, I didn't really enjoy, I liked public speaking. I never had a problem with public speaking, but one of the things that I struggled with a lot was change of audience. So in a big way, almost all ambassadors, we present to the sales force, whether that be an internal sales force or whether that be the distributor partners. I struggled speaking their like kind of tone or language, and it was for no other reason than me just rearranging my chat for that audience. Because being behind the bar, you learn all different types of customers, from genders to society. It doesn't really matter, right? You have people, I used to work in a hotel bar, one of the places that I worked at in New York. It was just like a Sheraton hotel bar. We had a broad spectrum of people that would come in, from college kids to, you know, professionals that worked in, you know, fashion versus somebody that worked in like textiles or like an industry that were more working with your hands. So it's the same as an ambassador, right? We speak to everyone. I mean, I represent the brand, speaking to consumers, speaking to bartenders, speaking to salespeople, and then obviously speaking to press and media. So my chat for all of them is different. And it's not that it's a different story, it's that the tone is completely different. So back to your original question, which is what makes a good bartender, is being there and present and knowing who you're talking to, and concisely but entertaining give that information. Sure. Because in some cases, man, it's the elevator chat. I got 3 seconds to tell you about Reyka Vodka, and then you're out. You're on to the next.
Right.
And then the flip side of that coin is now I have 60 minutes to discuss Reyka and a sales tactic as to how it's going to taste compared to other vodkas, or how you're going to now sell this to another bartender or beverage manager.
Sure.
So I would say those two things are kind of the bigger ones between Charlotte Voisey and then knowing who you're speaking to are very valuable.
Yeah, and for people, if you live under a rock and you don't know who Charlotte Voisey is, she is, to your point, kind of this iconic brand ambassador. And if I'm not mistaken, she works for William Grant & Son and is the brand ambassador, global brand ambassador for Hendrix.
So she started with William Grant & Sons as the Hendrix ambassador. She worked in that position for a very long time. Then she got promoted. Then she was like the brand director for the portfolio. So she managed all the ambassadors, which she currently does. But now she's also taken on another promotion, which is that she handles the PR internally for William Grant & Sons. So she is multifaceted. She is beautiful, super intelligent, smart, funny, all of these things. And as you said, if you don't know who she is, type it in the Google box, look her up. Watch some of her videos. She is my mentor through and through, day in and day out.
Yeah. And I mean, one of the things that I believe on just kind of the bartender side is that as a brand ambassador, to some point you are living the brand lifestyle, and she is the perfect example of that, to your point. And she walks in and you're like, okay, she has confidence in all these things that Hendrix represents as well, and William Grant & Sons. So I couldn't agree with you more on who's kind of an iconic role model for brand ambassadors.
Right.
Cool, man. So any other advice for bartenders looking to kind of go through the brand ambassador role, or kind of achieving that step?
So in addition to all of what we've already shared, I would just add that, don't rush, right? Like for me, again, this is speaking only my language, but the brand I needed to work for was a specific brand that I felt okay with. So make sure that you're in a situation that you thoroughly enjoy, because to your last point, Charlotte lives at 365 days. Like you are never done working.
Right.
And I don't say that in a negative way, but you do live the brand always. And with social media, like you can literally nonstop this 365, 24/7, no questions asked. We'll do another segment where we'll discuss balance, Chris, where we'll be like, we gotta sidebar this for the balance conversation.
That's a whole different, like,
completely different.
Like, oh God.
Yeah.
That's something we still struggle with. Being self-employed is like same thing. We work from home, so we don't really work from home. We live in our office, basically, is what it turns out to be. So, if you have any pointers, man,
we'll do a whole nother, I'm into it, like no questions asked. What I will say as well is that tell people that they can reach out to me with questions. I've always had that. I've never really publicly opened this up, but if you have questions, I mean, I'll get to you as soon as I can, but whether it be an email or find me on social media, Cocktail Ninja on Instagram is like the easiest way to just like drop me, a DM. I know the kids say slide into the DMs now. That's big joke. But I'm saying if you do have a question and you want me to answer it, like I'm always, always, always happy to answer it. It just will be as soon as I can get to it.
Sure. Yeah. So that's one of the last things I was going to ask you is social media with your preferential social media platform these days is Instagram?
Yeah, Instagram is kind of the easiest one. My Facebook like all of our Facebooks, right? It just gets bogged down with all this other stuff, and who has time? That's right. Instagram is quick, right? And it's the messages and the photos, and you can just keep going and going and going. But yes, Instagram, Cocktail Ninja.
Perfect, and we'll put those in the show notes. So if anybody's looking for that, just click on over and we'll have links to your brand, obviously.
Yes.
And, any other
Reyka.com.
Perfect. There it is.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Trevor, for your time and all your advice and your perspective on being a brand ambassador. I think there's a lot of people out there, bartenders. If you didn't know what it was, now you kind of know what that role kind of entails. And hopefully, if this is kind of a long-term career path for you, you can start laying down those first steps in order to kind of get there. And it sounds like one of the best things to do is just do the work and build your network.
100%, Chris.
Cool, man. Well, thanks again. And we'll have to get you on again to talk about that work-life balance thing.
I'm in it, Chris. Thank you very much. See you later.
Cheers.
Bye.
So thanks again to Trevor Schneider for sharing his time and his insights in being a brand ambassador and kind of what that day-to-day looks like. Hopefully he shared some great information with you, so that way if you're thinking about this long-term as a potential career path for yourself, you can have some stuff to work on now to really position yourself when you're ready to make that jump. Now that does it for this podcast, but we'll have some more in the future. One that I'm really looking forward to recording soon is a listener question. It's definitely one of our favorites, so if you have any listener questions, definitely include them in the show notes or reach out to us. I believe the email address is cheers@mixologytalk.com, or you can always reach us on our website at a bar above. So definitely get those listener questions in, and we'll have one for you shortly. So until then, cheers everyone.
Never miss an episode by subscribing in iTunes or YouTube. And as always, check out the show notes by clicking on the right.